Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Jeannie Long, Executive Director of Chicago Collections Consortium, and I'm excited to be in conversation today with author Jason Berry. Jason, who co-wrote along with Kevin Barron and in association with the Blue Island Historical Society, the Images of America publication on Blue Island. But before we begin, to our loyal CCC listeners, welcome back. And to those of you who are joining us for the first time today, welcome, and a little overview about Chicago Collections Consortium. CCC, as we like to call ourselves, is a consortium of libraries, museums, and cultural organizations all working together solely on the topic of Chicago history and culture. We share our members' archival collections through our Explore Chicago Collections portal, which provides free and open access to these amazing collections in just a few clicks of a button. So please visit the website and be prepared to be amazed. I also invite you to check out CCC's website to see a complete listing of upcoming programs. And take time on our homepage to subscribe to our newsletter so you don't miss out on any of our programming. We'd like to begin CCC's program with Chicago Collections Land Acknowledgement Statement, which reads, Chicago Collections Consortium acknowledges and is grateful for the Native peoples who laid the foundation for the city of Chicago and for the diverse indigenous nations that reside in Chicago today. When you visit our member organizations and when you experience Chicago's outdoor spaces, we invite you to join in offering respect and gratitude to the many indigenous peoples that reside in Chicagoland, as well as their ancestors. I'd also like to thank CCC's donors shown here, whose generous support allows us to offer unique free programming like this one being offered today, in addition to providing support for our Explore portal. So thank you to all our donors. I know our time will go by quickly today, and so we'll begin shortly, but a few housekeeping comments. We'll have time for questions following the discussion. They can be directed to the Q&A. Like all of CCC's programs, this one will be recorded today and posted on CCC's website, as well as shared on CCC's YouTube channel. So welcome, Jason. Congratulations on your book, Blue Island. And frankly, congrats and thank you for your work, not only as a historian, but for your great work that you do in your role as the Village of Lamont Economic and Community Development Director. Lamont's another amazing town that you wrote about. But let's begin our conversation on Blue Island today and its rich history.
That sounds good. And I want to give my co-author Kevin Barron a shout. He's there in the participants. So if you got a question in the chat, I bet Kevin could hop in and answer it for you. And thanks for joining us, Kevin. I really appreciate that, taking time out of your day at Joliet West. So just jump right into it. If you go on to the next slide, I start out here with Blue Island by the numbers. So that's me. A happy author. This is when our author copies, they send you 5 copies when those arrived in the mail. So this was the first day I got to put my hands on the book. It had been a long process. We had, started that in the late winter, spring of 2024, and it finally gets published in March of 2025. So it's been out for about 6 months or so now. And this is the second book that Kevin and I wrote together. As you mentioned, Lamont, where I work, our first book was an Images of America book for Lamont. So, what does it take to write an Images of America book? Well, about 200 images. So our Blue Island book consists of 211 images. As you could see, 173 of them come from the Blue Island Historical Society. That's really important for us for 2 things. One, it lets us highlight the great collection of the Historical Society and hopefully draws people to Blue Island, to the Albee House, to their home to learn more and see what else they have. But also it provides ownership for the images as well, which is important for the publisher, that the author confirms that there is clear ownership of the images and we're not going to come back and get in trouble.
We talked about this, Jason, before. I mean, what's so wonderful about these Images of America books too. They're the images are amazing, but it's a quick read too, and it's
Yeah.
it,
I
it
yeah, we joke. I get people that come up to me and say, "I bought the book, but I haven't read it yet." And I said, "It's okay. It's a picture book. It's images of America, So flip through it, and if you see an image that catches your eye, you're going to get a lot of information in that little caption. We're
right.
limited to 50 to 70 words per caption, and we just really try to pack it with as much information as possible. So, you could come back to it and find something of interest to you. You don't have to read the whole thing. And I often say too, I think I put this in the introduction of both books. It's a book about local history, but it's not a history book because you are limited to images. So there's maybe stories that are more resonant today, and we just don't have the images. So for Chicago collections, it points to the importance of continuing to grow that archive. Um, a lot of historical societies were founded in the 1970s. They got a lot of images and a lot of donations up front, and then they probably start to slow down. And so I've joked if you read the Blue Island book, you would think it's nothing but German immigrants that live in town. And that's just not true for the Blue Island of today. It's a very diverse community, something we're really proud of. Um, but that was a lot of the source material that we had to work with. And to be frank, those are the folks that built the community. So, that's what a lot of the story is. We arranged the book in 8 chapters, from the early history of the town through the industry. Of course, there's a chapter about the many churches of the community, some of the civic institutions and schools. Uh, Probably the period that's best documented in the historical society is like World War I through World War II, that kind of, the 19 teens up through the 1940s, 1950s. There's a lot of visual material there to draw from. So we have a lot of that. And then finally wrap up with some of the culture and communities that have made up Blue Island over the years as best we can. There's been sort of waves of immigration, like a lot of suburban communities, and all of them have left their mark. So as best we can, we've tried to tell some of those stories. Again, here's a plug for my co-author, Kevin Barron. Check out his website if you want to know everything south suburbs of Cook County and beyond. And, get on your phone now and follow his Instagram as well. And of course, a thanks to Ken Jellema. He is the official historian of the Blue Island Historical Society. So he sort of acted as our editor. He, of course, wrote the foreword, as I put there. But he's somebody that has read the book. He's read every page of the book several times, made sure we didn't make any mistakes. So I'm very grateful to Ken.
Well,
So
and I just have to add, this is why Chicago Collections does programming like this, to shed light on, recent publications about Chicagoland, but also to encourage those that have archives whose grandparents, great grandparents may have some material, to get it into the hands of historical societies, that could continue to grow that collection. So
yeah, I've seen working with like historical society archives, like photocopies, things like that, where like somebody wanted them to have them, but maybe there's an emotional attachment to that bit of ephemera, and like that doesn't help us
right.
as an author of an Image of America book. You really need the real deal, but it is important to continue to support our historical societies for sure. All right, let's move on. So I wanted to share a little bit about how to become an author for any Images of America book. As I said, if you got 200 images and 18,000 words in you, you start with an author proposal form from the publisher. Simple stuff. They want to know about your book and about who you are. You propose a schedule, which becomes very important. Obviously they're a publisher and they need to know that you're going to be able to deliver. They ask for sales information. So, do you have a place where you think you could sell the book? We have it at the Historical Society. You could buy it at City Hall in Blue Island. So, you go in and pay your water bill and come out with a book, um, as well as marketing and publicity. So, over the summer, Kevin and I were at an art fair in Blue Island, promoting the book. And we've done other opportunities to share what the book and publicity. This is it too, right? We're talking about the book.
Absolutely. And real estate agents should all jump on this when they make that
Yes.
sale of a home. What a great housewarming gift, too. So
There is a home that is for sale in Blue Island right now, maybe under contract. That's in the book. So I made sure I told the realtor, like, your home's in the
get a
book,
cut.
So that's pretty neat. Not every home is in the book. So yeah, definitely. So it's about it's a 15-page form that you complete, and the last section is give us the 10 most interesting highlights of your community, and then you send in 10 images as well, just to make sure they know that you're working with something. So on the next slide here, this is what they ask you. So give us your 10 most interesting highlights. Why would somebody be interested in your book? And what is going to excite them? So let's see if we get excited here. And as they mentioned, this stuff will likely be used in your book, and it was. So I organized this talk around our top 10, our 10 most
Perfect.
interesting highlights. These are copy pasted directly from our application to the publisher. And then we'll see how well Kevin and I did when we go through the images. All the images we're going to see until the very end are in the book. So you could turn to page XYZ and find these images. These are exactly how they were sent to the publisher. And all right, let's go from there. What's interesting? Number one, Blue Island was an island. You all know that, right? So glaciers began to retreat and Lake Chicago was formed, and Blue Island's in the center of that. So on our next slide, we have an image that we took from Volpe. John Volpe wrote a book, The First 100 Years, 1835 to 1935 in Blue Island. And an image like this is often used to illustrate Lake Chicago. And you could see Blue Island rising there in the midst of it all. So if you're familiar with Chicagoland geography and you're heading from the north side, traveling south down Western Avenue, when you get to Dan Ryan Woods, you start to go up the island, and then you continue along the ridge until you get to the Blue Island, and finally at about where the CalSag is today, Vermont Street and Blue Island, the ridge falls off, and you're back into that glacial lake plain. That's the pressure is slowly building all that clay that becomes sort of the soils of Chicago. But you could see as early as 1834, people were talking about Blue Island. So the name really goes back in time. What do we have next? Blue Island was blue. Everybody asks about this beautiful name. It's believed that there were blue flag irises around the island, was sort of marshy, swampy, clay, wetland. There was Stony Creek, a meandering little creek, and native plants were growing there. And you don't have to take my word for it. On the next page, or next slide, a quote again from the Chicago Democrat in 1834 when they visited Blue Island and saw its vast solitude and the azure mist of vapor, hence Blue Island. So that's where the name comes from. Next slide. Here is that visage looking out over the ridge. So you are looking at one of the earliest photos of Blue Island, about 1860s. This is from the Historical Society's archive. You're looking at a German settlement that's at the bottom of a hill now, they're moving into town following, the 1840s and the revolutions in Germany, lots and lots of immigration, German immigration to the United States, and many settled here. And then you could look out past that little village and see that great plain that the Chicago Democrat was talking about in the 1830s. It's still sort of undisturbed. You see a little bit of a creek back there, maybe a little bit of the Little Calumet River, and appreciation for, in flat Chicago, what a ridge Blue Island really was. So it's about 30 feet in elevation at this point down. You're looking at rooftops. The rooftop to the right will be a brewery, which becomes important later in the talk. So next slide. So fun fact number 3, the Little Calumet River was dammed at one point and helped bring water to Lamont to support the water levels in the Illinois and Michigan Canal. That little feeder channel would later become what's known as the CalSag. It doesn't follow the exact route, but the idea of getting out to the I&M and later the Sanitary and Ship Canal became part of the CalSag. And of course, the CalSag was later widened and is now part of the Illinois waterway system. So let's see what we found with some images. So this is the Reese map from 1851. You could see the trace of Blue Island there at the top, the sort of the upwood, and then T. Morgan. Morgan becomes a famous name in the South Side with Morgan Park. Blue Island there is identified as Worth, which was just the name of the township at the time, population. And you could see right under Worth and under that little town a feeder dam. And that feeder dam is on the Little Calumet, and that would have sent that water westward. The feeder dam was controversial to people on the other side of it as it backed up the Little Calumet River and would flood crops and the like. So there were actually attempts to demolish it like dynamite the dam from time to time before it was finally removed. Next one. So this is what Blue Island would have looked like in 1911 in that little creek, that Stony Creek that's running under Western Avenue. And above it now we have the railroad, the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific. Railroad is running over Western Avenue. We're looking west in this image in 1911. This is from the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, which we shortened to MWRDGC in our courtesy of to help save some words. But this is a really important collection for this book. You couldn't tell Blue Island's story without the collection of the MWRD. Next image. And jump forward 10 years, and what a crazy advance in technology we're seeing here. This is the Western Avenue Bridge as it crossed a new CalSag channel. It's about to open in a year or within a few months. And so and just the way travel has evolved in that decade as well. You're seeing a really hierarchy of street uses, kind of organized by speed, I would say. So at the center is the interurban with dedicated tracks. That's the that train would take you as far down as Kankakee, from Chicago to Kankakee through Blue Island. So trains are at the center of our transportation, of our right of way here. We now have dedicated lanes for vehicles, for automobiles primarily, but there's some evidence there that they're still sharing the street with some horse-drawn carts. There's a Borden delivery cart back there. And pedestrians now are really confined to the sidewalk with dedicated spaces and in part, barriers to protect them from the vehicles. So a lot happening here. This image is taken from the Rock Island tracks, looking north at Blue Island. And so you could sort of see the island rising up behind in the back of that image. Next. Again, the mighty MWRD collection. This is how the CalSag was sort of built through Blue Island. So they dug a ditch essentially, and it was 60 feet wide. And they started pouring concrete in 50-foot sections. So it was cast in place 50 feet, and they did this for 2.4 miles through Blue Island. So it's a significant section. These walls were 26 feet high and then were later backfilled. In the top right are the lock gates in Blue Island. These were the original controlling works for the CalSag. Today, those are at the O'Brien locks in the Calumet region. But this is where you went from the Calumet system into the CalSag. So these locks controlled the water levels between those two. The CalSag opens in 1922 to no fanfare, really. They just opened the gates and started using it. There's all these magnificent structures that were created as part of the sanitary district, the Chicago Sanitary District, building this canal. On the bottom right is a gas works that had to be accessed across. That was Stony Creek there. It's a Stony Creek spillway, so you could see how it's been channelized and altered. There's a bridge there, and I believe that's probably the last bridge left in Cook County that was built by the Chicago Sanitary District. I'm not 100%, but I'm willing to stake a claim for Blue Island that we have one of the last ones, as it was. It's not used really by the public, so it was just sort of
But it's
abandoned.
amazing looking at the images in terms of what was used and the technology at the time to get this done and the labor force. And, it's
Yeah, and this is coming, you know, the project started and then World War One starts and then
the interruptions.
and so the interruption and the difficulty in getting steel, the difficulty in getting materials, it was a tough project for the Chicago Sanitary District to take on. Yeah, for sure. So here's, a tug pushing its way through the CalSag. So if you're familiar with the CalSag of today, this is what the CalSag of yesterday looked like before it was widened by the Army Corps in 1962. Blue Island celebrates its rail bridges. If you've been through Blue Island, you've probably been stopped by a train. There's a lot of trains, but the rail fans love them, and real Blue Islanders do too. And so here is a view of some of these famous 5 bridges that are at crossing the CalSag under construction. The railroad bridges were built before the CalSag was eventually widened. And you could see by this barge, by the 1960s, the need to widen it as it has become, important for the Illinois waterway and for
Yeah, a huge
river
gateway.
traffic. Yeah. So the next image, I think, shows how they widened the CalSag. I love this picture. You could
Wow.
see how impressively wide it went. So it went from 60 feet to 225 feet. On the right are homes in Blue Island on appropriately named Canal Street. So they had, from their porch, they could see this massive public works project. As I mentioned, it was taken over by the Army Corps of Engineers as part of the Illinois waterway. So essentially in Blue Island, if you're looking at the north bank of the CalSag, you're looking at the historic CalSag walls and some of the infrastructure. The lock walls are still there and whatnot. And then they just widened it to the south in this manner. Next one. So the Rock Island Railroad was the first. We already talked about how you're probably getting stopped by a train, and they've been here for quite a while, since 1854. Um, many generations of trains have come through town, and those bridges, as I mentioned, are nationally interesting as they're part of the historic American engineering record. So let's look at some rail. So the first depot for the Rock Island was just a wood frame structure. This one was built in 1852. This one was built in 1868 for the Rock Island Railroad, or the Chicago, Rock Island and Pacific Railroad, and still stands. Metra has done, I would say, a loving restoration of it. Kudos to them for, um, you know, taking a look at these historic photos and doing the best they can to interpret it. And this is a very busy station at Vermont Street. Blue Island has about 100 trains a day stopping here at Vermont Street. The Rock Island runs on their sort of main line, so that would take you out to, Joliet to Chicago. But also a suburban line. So that's the line that runs through Morgan Park and Beverly and then into Chicago. So both branches of the Rock Island converge here in Blue Island. And it's a testament to how important the Rock Island Railroad was to Blue Island in its day. Next one. So obviously, we are trying to tell stories that resonate today with Blue Islanders. And as I mentioned, Blue Island's a diverse community now, but there's not a lot of diversity in the images we're looking at. We were able to find this one. I was grateful, with the Pullman Porter in it. So, there you could see a Pullman. I think the Pullman car might be the third car back there. Get to explain how important the railroad was for not just industry, but for the folks that lived and worked in Blue Island. Next one. So, a glimpse at how vast the Rock Island yards were. Um, they employed 1,000 people in town, which is was quite a bit. On that top image, you could see the old St. Benedict steeple back there. So this is, they stretch from 123rd Street down to, the edge of the canal there. So really vast, vast yards. Um, on the bottom left image is a view of the roundhouse that was there. That was built in 1919. It had 20 stalls where they would bring in cars and et cetera to repair. There's still some remnants of that as you pass by. Um, I mentioned we had a lot of railroads, so it wasn't just the Rock Island. The Chicago Terminal Railroad, later the Baltimore and Ohio Chicago Terminal had a depot, believe it or not, in Blue Island on the west side of the community, and the Illinois Central. That's their first depot in Blue Island. They operated service. They first started in 1892 when they ran the branch line from Pullman down to Blue Island. All right, what's our next fun fact? Here's just a general glimpse of what it looked like. This is from the state of Illinois, and you could see the old canal running through the town. It wasn't yet expanded, but again, all the railroads crisscrossing through the community. Those blank blotchy spots are brickyards, which we'll get to. But you could see how the railroads really dominated the geography of the community. All right. And our famous five bridges. So this is a photo by
Yeah,
Kevin Barron.
it's awesome. Mhm.
Yeah, and so this is on Broadway, looking north at the old railroad bridges. Um, I can almost guarantee you, if you go there any day of the week, you'll find rail fans out there checking it out. All right, halfway through, number five. I'm going to claim that the first German lagers in Chicagoland were stored in Blue Island because of its island and the railroads. So here's some of our proof. Um, the first brewery in Blue Island was Henry Bauer. We saw his rooftop in that 1860s view. So there's a view of his brewery. He came to Blue Island in 1849. And because Blue Island is an island and is a hill, the Germans would tunnel into this hill and lager or store. They would lager their beers in Blue Island. And so in Flat Chicago is one of the few places you could actually find a place to dig a hillside cave and lager beer. On the images on the left is from an 1858 map that's owned by the Historical Society, and you'll see a number of prominent buildings, including several breweries. So in the bottom left, Block 6 is Metz's Brewery. Block 8 is Bauer's Brewery, which we're looking at here. It's right along where it says Blue Island, that's Western Avenue. And then on the top, north of the railroad in Block 5 is Bauer and Bruch, and then in Block 2 is Reiser's Brewery. So 1858 map with four active breweries in Blue Island at the time.
It's a lot. It's a lot.
It's a
It's a
lot.
wet community.
Yeah, yeah. We either drank a lot or we exported a lot of beer, and I think probably both.
Didn't have to go far.
No, no. Next one. So this is the Bush and Brand Brewery. It's the one that lasted the longest. It becomes the Blue Island Brewing Company, and it lasts up until Prohibition as part of United Breweries. The 3.5 story sort of grain elevator is there kind of at the center to the right of the brewery structure itself. And attached to that was the 3-story brew house. There was a bottling facility, an ice house, a wagon shed, and then they had 5 vaults for storing barrels backed up into the hill. And this is an image from the Rock Island yard. You could start to see, how that hill worked with the homes above it. And I love the caption, Old Brewery and the Catholic Church. That was the German Catholic Church there. St. Benedict Church is looking over its brewery. Next one. So here are the brewers and the workers, the laborers, the Bush and Brand, displaying some of their advertising signage. So their brewery opened in 1853, and they had a capacity of 5,000 barrels. So the founder, Valentine Bush, arrived in Chicago in 1851. And again, the German demand for lager beer meant the Blue Island Germans were very busy brewing it. Next one. And here's our cover star. I think, there he is. Um, when you do an Images of America book, you send them up to 10 images, a number of images for a cover, and they pick the one that they like best. And we are happy that they picked this one. The city's happy they picked this one. The Historical Society's happy they picked this one. And that says a lot about who Blue Island is. We don't mind holding a beer and holding a cleaver at the same time. We know how to work and we know how to have a good time as well. So this is a view of Klein's, and you know these are the beers that they would be drinking from Bush and Brand and other local breweries right here in town. Next image, an exterior view of that same bar. So all the way at the left, you can see John Klein on the sign there in that building. No longer a bar, but the building itself still stands on Old Western Avenue. And this image also shows one of the highlights of the month for Blue Island, what was known as Market Day. So Blue Island was surrounded by agricultural use. The suburbs haven't developed into the South Cook suburbs that we know today. And farmers from far and wide would come to Blue Island one day a month to trade and barter goods and sell their merchandise. So you get a view here of our famous bar, our cover star bar, as well as a market day scene on Western Avenue. And next. So Blue Island Brickyards, they were a big deal. They were located on the clay beds along the island. And as I claim here, they helped build Chicago after the Great Fire when bricks were in high demand. All right, next. So we're looking at the Blue Island brick workers. Here they are hanging out for a portrait. The Blue Island Local Number 3 of the Illinois Brickmaker Alliance was the largest in Cook County. There was over 700 men that were part of the IBA, which was chartered in 1893. The brickworkers in Blue Island have been organizing since 1886. They were striking for better pay, 8-hour workdays, union recognition. They had also become important later in support of railway unions and their strikes. So very active in the early labor movement in the Chicagoland region. Next one. So we're looking at the Purrington Brickyard, which opened in 1883. And so you see in the background just a very large shed. The guys were hanging out in one of those earlier for their picture. So they were used to, at first they were used to dry bricks, and they are later used to store bricks. By 1892, there were 6 brickyards in Blue Island, and they were capable of making 40 to 50,000 bricks per day. So a lot of bricks were coming out. This Purrington is right adjacent to the Rock Island tracks there. There are 2 near Calumet Grove. There are 2 at 123rd Street on the west side of Blue Island, and 2 in neighboring Alsip, what is now Alsip as well. So a lot of bricks coming out of this town and the region. Next one.
And how long did that last, Jason? How long?
Until the pits dried up, so 1920s, I would say. Eventually, you can't take any more clay out of the ground,
Right.
or the quality of the clay isn't good enough. So a detail of a Sanborn map. You're at 119th and Vincennes, so Chicagoland residents could probably figure out pretty quickly about what corner you're standing at, and you could see this is just a half of the size of the Purrington and Kimball Brick Company at the time. This is from 1897, this map here. And so they were operating, 5 brick machines connected to 5 dryers. Clay would be dug from that pit outlined over there, west of the machinery by steam shovels, which was an innovation for Purrington. And then obviously the proximity to the railroads was really critical to the success. And it shows sort of the integration of the brick industry and the railroads. Not only were the brick makers on sort of the low ground below the ridge where the clay beds were, but that's where the railroads chose to run as well. So they were able to bring their product to market pretty rapidly. Next. Blue Island played a pivotal role in the Pullman strike. So with the railroads coming through Blue Island would have a role to play, and they would derail a rail car, and federal troops would be sent into Blue Island. So next. So just some illustrations, again, this is coming out of the Depression of 1893 when Pullman cuts his wages, but not his rents. And the American Railway Union goes to the Pullman shops and organizes a strike. The rail workers in Blue Island, and brick workers and others were supportive of a sympathy strike. And so on June 30th of 1894, the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad workers joined that Pullman boycott. And so a sleeper car would approach Blue Island. They would put a mail car onto railroad cars. So say it was this was a federal issue. You're interfering with U.S. mail. And that would enter Blue Island on July 2nd. Next slide. So you could see here the federal agents protecting a Pullman sleeper car attached to a U.S. mail car as they're coming through Blue Island, and sort of the chaos that ensued. So on July 2nd, 1894, the U.S. Marshal and Cook County Sheriffs took 135 men to Blue Island. It was said they were met by 2,000 protesters, and a battle erupted with workers throwing stones and uncoupling the cars, stranding them in Blue Island. Next one. So as you could tell, labor had a big influence on the community, not surprisingly. Labor Day was a big deal. It was such a big deal that it's often just called Blue Island Day. So if you're looking through the archives and you see a Blue Island Day parade, that was a Labor Day parade. That's how synonymous labor was with the early community. I found this little piece of ephemera from Labor Day 1918 hanging up at the Blue Island Library, where the Historical Society had some of its collection exhibited. And I thought it was really fascinating. Central Labor Union means something for people that follow labor. The Central Labor Union was formed just ahead of the Haymarket riot, and included many of the sort of anarchists and others that were part of that movement. The Central Labor Union felt that the tradesmen weren't sufficiently radical and were organizing their own. It didn't last. By the 1890s, you have the Federation of Labor, which most of the unions belonged to. But I think given maybe the Germanness of Blue Island and how many of those early labor agitators were also Germans, maybe the Central Labor Union continued to hold some resonance for the community. Anyways, a very interesting point in Labor Day 1918, where you're in the backdrop of World War I, and now all these Germans are suspicious, right? They're immigrant aliens, and it's a very unique and interesting time for Blue Island. All right, let's move on to fun fact number 8. Cruising through. We're almost in the home stretch here. So it has amazing architectural history. And I'm sorry that we're only
Really
going to get a
does.
little bit of it because this is what I copy pasted from. Again, this is from our proposal. And if you get the book, you'll find architecture gems in every chapter, schools, public buildings, civic buildings, homes. But we'll do just a few of the great homes and hopefully encourage you to come back
Well,
down.
and it's a beautiful community just to drive around and see all these different types of
Take
architecture
the
too.
Rock Island down to Blue Island and walk it.
Absolutely. Make a day of it.
Yeah. All right. So this is sort of the premier block in Blue Island, Greenwood Avenue. The community, you saw on market days how everybody came to Blue Island for market, but everybody also came to Blue Island for their banking needs. Blue Island had opened a hospital in 1901. And so, um, you know, bankers, doctors, attorneys, realtors, land speculators, all those folks were living in Blue Island as it was the established city in the Southern Cook County region. So they built beautiful homes for themselves, right? The people that own the brickyards and manage them and the grain elevators and all the rest built these mansions, and many of them are located on Greenwood Avenue, which is just a block west of Western Avenue. So, close to their place of business. Next one. So this is at the corner of Greenwood and York on the left. This is the William Weber House. He came to Blue Island in 1889. He's the president of the Board of Education. They had hired George Washington Mayer, a prominent Chicago architect, to design a school building, which you see in the bottom right corner. That's Sanders School. And I guess the superintendent was so impressed that he asked the architect to design a home for himself. So this one here was built around 1899, the Weber House. Liederkranz Hall is another Mayer design that was commissioned. Again, you could see the prominence of the German immigrants, 1853 to 1903. They're celebrating their 50th anniversary there. This building, unfortunately, has been lost to a fire. Next.
And you did share, Jason, in September is the house walk in Blue Island too. So we'll put in a plug for that when after you take the Rock Island down and
Yeah,
see the
every
tracks.
September, the Blue Island Historical Society has a historic house walk. My home was on the house walk about 10 years ago. So I'm overdue for another trip through. But yeah, it's a great opportunity to get inside these homes, but they also offer walking tours all throughout the year. So visit their website and sign up for a walking tour. There's different themes. And so even if you don't get inside the homes, which is what the house walk provides, you still get to have a sort of a curated experience walking around the community. This is Robert Seyfarth, the architect most closely associated with Blue Island. He was born in our community, and he built this home for him and his wife Nell in 1903. Seyfarth worked for George Washington Mayer, who we saw already, and began his own practice in 1909. Would move to Highland Park later and spend the rest of his life there. So this is the only design he completed in that prairie school tradition, very clearly influenced by some of Mayer's work and the contemporaries at the time. But he would branch out and kind of do his own thing shortly after. Next slide. And so this is Seyfarth's more mature style, what he's best known for, where he takes sort of traditional massing and flattens it. The use of steel casement windows is prominent. Always these inverted dormers to preserve the roof line. So it's a very geometric take on something that maybe his more traditionally minded clients were looking for. Revival styles, but done in a surprisingly modern way. He always captures the interest, usually with this sort of heavy stone element. And as we were talking before we got started, my wife asked for two things: to get our house in the book, and could we get in the book? And we're not historic yet. This is a photo by Kevin Barron, our co-author, and he had the good idea to capture us walking our dogs as he took the picture here. So that's my wife with Dill and me with Poppy Seed, our two wiener dogs. So thank you, Kevin. And we made it. When you're the co-author of a book, you could take certain liberties. Next slide. And this is hopefully well-known Bertrand Goldberg House. I was just out at Open House Chicago over the weekend, and the Hilliard homes on the south side were open, which is a Goldberg design, and it is in that famous sort of corn cobby, this undulating concrete form that he's best known for. So if you don't know Goldberg, you know Marina City, and you know those corn cobs on the river. And so as I was there with my wife Mary, she's like, this is really such a surprise because it's such a departure from this home, which is all right angles and clearly done in what's known as the international style, popularized by the Bauhaus and others. So this home was built for Dr. Aaron Heimbach in 1939. Again, I mentioned the number of the hospital and the physicians. This home served as both his doctor's office and the family's living quarters. So on the left, the sort of brick face there was the doctor's office. That was the waiting room. There was an x-ray room in here and a couple of exam rooms. And then all the glass walls that you see, that's the living space for the family, organized around an oversized, chimney or hearth in the corner of the building. The current owners have done a remarkable job preserving this home. In 2009, they won a Driehaus Foundation Preservation Award from Landmarks, Illinois, for the work they did to restore the home. All right, and two more plugs. Again, Blue Island Historical Society. They have a lot of work that they've been doing to honor the work of Robert Seyfarth, and people should be aware of the George Mayer organization as well, which is housed within the Historical Society, the Blue Island Historical Society. So to learn more, check out those two excellent organizations.
No, thanks for sharing that.
Yep. All right, getting close. Number 9, Beggar's Pizza. My favorite
So
pizza.
this is what you'll have when you take the train down, go on the walking tour.
Yeah, you better. So they were founded in Blue Island, and the family continues to invest in the community. And some of that ended up in the book. So next. So this is the Lyric Theater. One of several theaters that you'll find in the book and in the community. So a popular theater in town. Next slide. It suffered a fire in 1960, almost destroying the whole building. You could see Iverson's Bakery over there on the right was saved. Nobody was injured in the fire, and the Lyric did rebuild. So next slide. So reopened, I think, in 1962 in sort of a common mid-century style. Not a lot of ornament. This sort of perforated brick. You could see they left a little bit of Iverson's Bakery just sitting there on the side. No need to fix them up. And this operated up through the 80s. It had a couple other lives. It was Dream Street Theater. Went through a couple different hands, people trying to figure out how to make it work. And really, it took the commitment of the Greto family and the Cantello family as well, and what Blue Island has meant to them to bring it to where it is today. So one of the few modern photos will be next. Ta-da! I took this yesterday. So you can see what's happening this weekend at the Lyric. But they did a wonderful job. They brought back that marquee, lights up. It looks great at night, a big neon sign. So they did a wonderful job of incorporating the heritage of this building, and bringing it back to life with mostly like concerts, live music, and the likes. And they also, when Iverson's Bakery, when the family said they decided to close, the Gretel family purchased Iverson's as well. So Iverson's has recently undergone a renovation. You could still get their world famous donuts and cookies, but you could also get a cup of coffee and sit around now. So definitely make a stop on your Blue Island tour.
Yeah, it's amazing to have that support to keep businesses like this alive. So
Yeah.
kudos to them.
All right, number 10, we're at the end. The history of the Mexican American worker mural, which was painted in the 70s, became a landmark free speech case. The artists were stopped by the city because they didn't get a sign permit. Um, the plaintiff sued the city of Blue Island and they were allowed to complete the work. As I mentioned, it was refreshed in 2016. So the next slide shows the completed work. Ray Patlon was the main artist along with two others. And so this was painted in association with the Illinois Labor and others, and um, was the first mural, to show the importance that the Mexican American community had in Blue Island. You could see some track workers down there in the bottom left, truckeros. That's how many immigrants arrived in Blue Island, and they were actually housed by the railroads in boxcars. There were boxcar camps, so the railroad would take the wheels or the trucks off of their cars, place them on the ground, and use that as housing for its track workers. The first recorded Mexican American births in Blue Island are, you will say, borough camp or railroad camp and the like as their place of birth. And so this mural stood for some time as outdoor art. It began to deteriorate, and one day the property owner painted over it, decided that it had become too deteriorated. So next image. But before any of that happened, as I mentioned, the city of Blue Island tried to stop the mural from even existing. So somebody scrawled on here, reserved for the mural painting, forbidden by the Blue Island City Council. I plucked this image out of the City of Blue Island building department files. I worked for the city for 8 years, and when I was researching the mural in 2016, found this photograph in the city's archives. Next. And as we whitewashed, acid washed, however washed the side of the building, preparing for a new mural, you could see quite a bit of the old mural was there. In orange, you could see scrawled, some of that message as well when it was known as the Forbidden Mural. And then the last picture there, next, is what the mural looks like today, the completed mural. So some elements remain the same, and others are done. We brought the original artist Ray Patlon back, and he was joined by two
Great.
locals to sort of author this new mural. Next.
That's in itself an interesting story of, community engagement and process of time.
It was, and the first mural was forbidden. The city tried to stop it. The second mural, the city supported it. I think the city contributed $5,000, and the community raised another $15,000. To bring in Ray, house him, pay the artists. Do it the right way. Make sure we had quality paints and all the rest. So this time, when it was unveiled, there was a celebration. There was a cake. The street was closed off. So yeah, from
And how
19.
wonderful to have the documentation that you shared to see the before and the now and what occurred in between. So
Yeah. So since we got a collections group, I wanted to just share where we got our sources for the book. So there's the number of images that we took for each. As I said, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District was a great source. Library of Congress, the online collection, easy to download images. So the maps that are in the book, Sanborn maps and others, are from there. We used one aerial from the Illinois State Geological Survey, but that's an awesome resource. Aerials from the 30s, 60s, and 70s, and incredible detail. I'm surprised we only used one. We had a show restraint, I think. A few private collections, not many. We have two from Fred Bellato, who's the mayor of Blue Island. He has a great Blue Island collection. So there was a couple images that I knew he had his hands on that we wanted in the book. And then one from one of our local taverns, the Rock Island Public House. And then photography, Kevin Barron contributed all the photography, mostly in the chapter on homes where, there might not be a historic photo of somebody's, single family home. And so he provided the photography. Next. We have a bibliography if you're interested. These are the sources where all the things came from. Again, a lot of this is in the collection of the Blue Island Historical Society. So you'll see those booster books, I'll call them, done by a Chamber of Commerce or a Lions Club. But like look at this modern factory that we have in town. So wonderful and new. So we would scan a lot of those images. Parish collections as well. So you see Saint Donatus, Saint Benedict. Not only would they have great photos of their church and the like, but what their parishioners were doing and what the community looked like at the time. So those were really great resources for us from the collection of the Historical Society. John Volpe wrote the first 100 years, and that is sort of our guide largely to that. That book may still be in print at the Historical Society. But he donated the rights to his book to the Historical Society before he passed away. And then, other resources that we found valuable.
No, thank you for sharing that. Thanks, Jason. I'm ready to hop on the train, ready to get to I know we already have a couple questions. I get the Blue Island name because there was a real Blue Island. Was there a Stony Island?
Yeah, Stony Island was an island too, just not as old as Blue Island. Lanes Island, Mount Forest was an island as well. You could see that in the early picture where the Des Plaines and then the sag cut in. So as the glacier Lake Chicago receded, there was multiple islands. Yeah.
I have to ask, what's next for you in terms of writing, and what do you have
Yeah.
your sights set on? Now
Kevin
that
and
you
I,
know Chicago Collections Consortium and our Explorer portal, which will make it that much easier for you.
yeah, I think probably both Kevin and I have had people reach out to us about, working with their community. So we're interested. Um, I can't give away too many details yet, but I do have access to a collection that was digitized. And that's a challenge for these books because the publisher requires you to submit your images to their standards. So scanned as a TIFF, certain DPI, grayscale, no image correction, etc. So I can't take any old scan and submit them to them other than in the proposal where they don't care about the image quality. So I'm working on some ways to print these images and rescan them, and we're going to see if that works out. So we might have book 3 on the way.
So come and let us know when it's ready, and be happy to share it, and check out the resources, how we can be of help too at Chicago Collections Consortium. But no, I really appreciate your time today for our listeners, and we don't have any other questions, but post discussion today, if you do have some questions for Jason, please reach out to Chicago Collections and we'll forward those on, and we'll look forward to staying in touch. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for your
Thank you.
time.
Bye-bye.